Welcome to a new episode of The Brand Called You. I am Arini and I'm with Ashutosh Garg. Today we are talking about a very difficult topic. Uh, it's entrepreneurial depression. In light of the recent events, I feel that it is a topic that needs deliberation and we need to talk more about it. Hello, sir.
Hi, Aruni.
I read your article on the recent event regarding the CEO of Cafe or Coffee Day, Mr. Siddhartha. Do you think it is entrepreneurial depression that caused him to take this drastic step? Is there an entrepreneurial depression at all?
So, Aruni, the world will never know as far as this individual is concerned.
Right.
But I think we should look at what goes on in the mind of an entrepreneur. You start a business. Obviously, if you're starting, you want it to be a success. There is a lot of pressure that all entrepreneurs are under on how to make their company into a unicorn, or if not a unicorn, an indicorn. And there are a lot of self-imposed pressures that we go through. And yet, the old line of "it's lonely at the top" cannot be more true than for an entrepreneur.
Right.
Very, very few entrepreneurs have built a social support system with whom they can go and talk about their challenges.
Right.
And most of us just assume that because I'm going to lead an enterprise, I have the wherewithal to be able to handle not only my company's problems and the problems of all my people, but also my own problems. And that is where I think a lot of entrepreneurs make serious mistakes because they keep on internalizing their problems, they don't talk about their problems, and they keep on just absorbing more and more and more stress till it reaches a breaking point. So I don't want to really hypothesize about the Coffee Day incident, but when an entrepreneur's expectations of himself and an entrepreneur's expectations from society become much larger than the capability of that individual to deliver, then extreme steps get taken.
Correct.
And extreme steps, the Coffee Day is one example, but there is an example that I love to give, which is the former vice chairman of General Motors in the 70s and 80s, John Z. DeLorean, who was invited by the British government to form, to set up a company, car manufacturing company in the UK. He set up that company. It would have been, he was a very high-profile individual, hobnobbing with Hollywood people and so on. And his company started to lose money. And what did he resort to when he couldn't raise money anywhere else? He resorted to smuggling drugs.
Wow.
He was caught by the US Fed. He lost not only his entire business, but he's still in jail.
Oh.
So, entrepreneurs, the big mistake they make is that they do not talk about the problems. And all the stress then starts to manifest itself into, a lot of self-loathing, a lot of self-concern, a lot of self-pity. And that manifests itself in a lot of depression.
So I would like to investigate more on what leads to this depression. You said that they make a lot of mistakes. They are not able to internalize their mistakes. But what leads to these mistakes? What are the bad decisions that they take over time that makes them depressed?
So I'm working on the assumption that the business model is not flawed.
Right.
If your business model is flawed and you keep on putting good money after bad money, then in any case you have trouble.
Right.
But if you have a business model that can succeed, and then you try and either scale up too fast, or don't get the right management teams, or don't have sufficient money, or something which an entrepreneur, I don't think does, but there are entrepreneurs who've done it, which is to divert money. So they raise money and then they divert it to other uses. Right? When that starts, one of these 4 or 5 problems start to come into play, that's a sure sign of where an entrepreneur is going to start creating serious mistakes. And I'm absolutely certain everybody who listens to you and me now on our podcast will know that when you make one mistake and you try and cover it up, then every time you make a mistake, you cover it up, then you do something else to cover up the mistake, and that becomes like a snowball, and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, till the mistakes you are making not only subsume you but your entire organization.
Right. You mentioned that when an entrepreneur faces a failure, it's a quadruple whammy. And I will, for your this thing, first one is loss of confidence. Second is loss of all investments. Then there is pressure from creditors and employees.
Yeah.
And then the fourth one, which is negative coverage. Now, you have pretty forensically investigated the entire process. Now, during this, what can an entrepreneur do? Because the first one gets, once he's hit by the first loss of confidence, everything else just follows. What must one do to avoid that?
So, Aruni, if you look at the whole process,
Right.
I'm very excited. I'm setting up my business. I've put my entire heart and soul into the business. I've made sure that, I've put whatever money I have earned, and then the business starts to fail.
Right.
The 4 steps that you just outlined are absolutely correct. What happens first? As the business is failing and I'm not being able to make up that business and I'm struggling, the first thing that I suffer is a lot of sense of self-worth, a lot of loss of confidence, saying, how could I have failed? Right? And I'm doing a lot of introspection and thinking. As I'm doing all that, the whole process, I know that all the money that I have earned, and along with me, most entrepreneurs have taken money from friends and family, and maybe from angel investors. They're also worried that I'm going to lose all the money. Then as you start business, you have employees, you have creditors, you may have got private equity investors. All these people now start demanding their money back. And irrespective of how your company is structured or whether legally they can take their money at all or not, the entrepreneur is under moral pressure to say that, I've got to return all this money. They gave it to me because they trusted me.
Right.
And finally, our fourth estate. Our fourth estate can be very unkind.
Right.
They really drive it into you and publicize your failure to such an extent that you don't know how to cope with it.
Right.
So these are realities. These keep happening over and over again. And I think it is very important for every entrepreneur to be aware. I'm not saying that, our chat today is going to correct the imbalance. But if as an entrepreneur, I'm aware that there can be these 4 or 5 challenges that I could face if I have a failure,
Right.
then at least I'll be better prepared for it.
Over the course of last few years, we have had multiple failures of fairly big companies. Some of the entrepreneurs flee the country, and then I don't know if they save themselves, but then they flee the country, and our fourth estate was not very kind on them. But in this case, when he took a drastic step, the fourth estate is kind of kind. So now that gives a very negative connotation that maybe that's the right step to take. What do you think about that?
I think it is also a perception issue. If I owe large sums of money to the bank and I run away, then I'm not seen as a failed entrepreneur. Then I'm seen as a fugitive who has refused to pay money, which is really public money since it is coming to me from banks. And that is when the fourth estate, or for that matter, the government or anyone else, will never be kind. If, on the other hand, I've had serious business losses, I stay there and fight. And then I take the extreme step. Then I do believe people will appreciate, and appreciate may not be the right word, but people will understand the step that I took. Having said that, I think it is very unfair for us to blame the authorities, saying, that because of some government body, this whole problem has come about. I think nothing can be farther away from the truth. Because if I owe money to the banks, I have to repay them. If I owe money to the tax authorities, I have to repay them. I cannot just turn around and say that, I have a problem, I owe tax money, and it's because of him that I'm going to put myself into trouble.
Right.
So I think we have to recognize our responsibility as entrepreneurs. We have to recognize and understand that in our journey as entrepreneurs, we will create liabilities. And it is our responsibility to make sure those liabilities are paid off.
Okay, makes sense. But there is another side to it with all this happening, especially the suicide case. A lot of people are now scared that, okay, this probably is not a very easy thing to do. Maybe we should not do it because it can lead to drastic actions, and maybe the private equity is not good. Somebody came up to me the other day and was like, okay, my friends were chatting about it. Since I know a little bit about what private equity is, I told them, no, stay away from them. They are bad people. And it's a 21-year-old young girl. Now, what do you think about this perception that this entire incident has created? Will it drive people away from entrepreneurship?
No, I don't think so. I think, in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, you have the entrepreneur, you have, angel investors, you have private equity, you have bank finance, and all other forms of money. And money is really the engine that drives an entrepreneur's business. So sometimes people do have knee-jerk reactions. There may be pressure from some private equity people who, we must remember, are in the business of money.
Right.
So it is their job to make money from money,
Right.
which is why they're investing in you. So I think, when an extreme step gets taken, everyone sits back and thinks. But for the entrepreneurial ecosystem to work well, for it to thrive, you need money, and that money can only come from private equity.
Correct.
So I don't think we need to be too worried about that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll talk more about this in our next few episodes.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You podcast. Be sure to visit tbcy.in to join the conversation, access show notes, and discover fantastic bonus content. You can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Simply search for the Brand Called You. Thank you, and see you next week.